today's topic about the Aleppo Codex, the famous Aleppo Codex. We actually visited Nachlaot, the famous Ada synagogue, and they had like a model, let's say, picture of the Codex in of itself. So I thought in today's special feature we will speak about it. It's also known as a Keter, or the crown of Aleppo. It was a medieval bound manuscript of the Hebrew Bible. Now the Codex was written, I believe, in the holy city of Tiberias in the 10th century Common Era, and I think around the time period of 920. At that point in time, it was under the rule of the Abbasid Caliphate over there, and was endorsed for its accuracy by Maimonides at the time. Maimonides lived between the years 1138 till 1204, the famous Rambam who was spoken about on various occasions before. Now, together with someone named Lenigard Codex, he was oldest known. It's the oldest known complete manuscript of the Hebrew Bible in Hebrew. It contains Aaron ben Moses ben Asher. He was a Sofer from Tiberias. The Masoretic text tradition, respectively. Now, this codex was kept for 5 centuries in the central synagogue of Aleppo until the synagogue was torched during the anti-Jewish riots. This was back in the year 1947. Now, I think we've spoken about this famous synagogue before on various occasions. Maybe we'll do a special feature on the famous synagogues in Syria. I think we should do at one point in time, because much can be said about many of the great synagogues of different, let's say, Sephardic countries that there have been all throughout. It was this synagogue itself was a splendid synagogue in of its own right. I think it was completed in the 9th century, and one of the famous Sephardi Mustarabi prayer liturgy synagogues that there has been, without doubt, in Jewish history. I'm not sure who all the great rabbis that happen to be in of itself during this point in time, but I think much is spoken from Elkan Nathan Adler, who was a famous English author, lawyer, historian, about the synagogue. He was actually the father of Nathan Marcus Adler, who was a chief rabbi, I believe, of the British Empire at one stage in time, which we've spoken about on various occasions before. Okay, so that actually occurred in the synagogue in the anti-Jewish riots in the year 1947. The fate of the Codex during the subsequent decades is still unclear, I believe. When it resurfaced in Israel, I believe in the year 1958, only around 40%, it's estimated, of the manuscript, including the majority of the Torah section, was missing, and only 2 additional leaves have been recovered since then. The original supposition, let's just say, that the missing pages were destroyed in the synagogue fire has increasingly been challenged. There was speculation, I think, that they survived in private hands. It's reported there, we're just reading notes from Wikipedia. The portion of the codex that is accounted for is housed in the shrine of the book at the Israel Museum, respectively, at the moment. Now the name, it's of the Keter Arum Tzova, translated as the crown of Aleppo. Keter obviously means a crown, and Arum Tzova is literally outside Aram, and was a not yet identified biblical city in what is now Syria, whose name was applied from the 11th century onwards by some rabbinic sources and Syrian Jews to the area of Aleppo in Syria. The Keter is a translation of Arabic Taj, originally Persian, and the codex was an al-Taj by locals under the modern period. In Arabic, I think the term Taj was used mostly as a stock superlative title, let's just say. And we can say more about that. Now, an overview of it with regards to it. Now, it's reported over here, using notes from Wikipedia, the Karaite Jewish community of Jerusalem purchased Codex about 100 years after it was made. When the Crusaders conquered Jerusalem in 1099, the synagogue was plundered. The Codex was held for a high ransom, which was paid with money from Egypt, leading to the Codex being transferred there. It was preserved by the Karaites, it's reported over. Then at the Rabbinate Synagogue in Old Cairo. This was let's say, a historic area in Cairo. The Old Cairo was, and we've spoken, I think, maybe about the synagogue before, where it was consulated by Maimonides, who described it as a text trusted by all Jewish scholars. It was rumored in the year 1375, one of Maimonides' descendants brought it to the Malmuk ruled Aleppo, leading to its present name. The Codex remained in Syria for nearly as many as 600 years. In 1947, the rioters, enraged by the United Nations partition plan for Palestine, burned down the synagogue where it was kept, and the Codex disappeared. Then re-emerged in 1958 when it was smuggled into Israel by a Syrian Jew, someone named Murad Faham, and presented to the president of the state at that point in time was Yitzhak Ben Tzvi. Yitzhak Ben Tzvi was a historian, author, and anthologist. He was a labor Zionist leader and I think he was the longest serving president of Israel. And he was elected, I think, in December, no, I think 16th of December 1952, would be a position he would serve until he passed away. Now, sometimes after the arrival, it was found that parts of the Codex had been lost. The Aleppo Codex was entrusted to the Ben Tzvi Institute and the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And I think as of 2019, it was on display in the shrine of the book at the Israel Museum, respectively. Israel Museum is hopefully somewhere we will visit in this channel at one stage in time. We'd like to do. I think Israel submitted the Aleppo Codex for inclusion in UNESCO's Memory of the World International Register and was included in the year 2015. Now, the ransom from the Crusaders, let's speak about that. That was in the 1100, I think. The Karaite Jewish community of Jerusalem received the book from Israel Ben Simcha of Basra, sometime between the year 1040 to 1050. Now, in this series itself, we haven't really spoken much about rabbis from the 1000s, 1100s, 1200s, maybe done a few videos of great rabbis from there. If anyone is tuning in over here, this is something that we do in this channel. It was cared for by brothers Hiskiah and Joshua, Karaite religious leaders who eventually moved to Fustat, obviously old part of Cairo in 1050, and the Codex stayed in Jerusalem until the latter part of the century. After the siege of Jerusalem in 1099, during the First Crusade, the Crusaders held the Codex ransom. Letters in the Cairo Geniza describe inhabitants of Ashkelon borrowing money from Egypt to buy back 230 Bible codices, 100 other volumes, and 8 Torah scrolls from the Crusaders, which may have included the Codex. A Judeo-Arabic inscription on the lost first page of the Codex described the book that was transferred according to the commandment to redeem captives from the loot of the holy city of Jerusalem. May she be rebuilt and reestablished to the Egyptian congregation, to the Jerusalemite synagogue. May Jerusalem be rebuilt and reestablished in the life of Israel. Blessed be he who preserves it, and cursed be he who steals it, or or sells it, or pawns it. It may never be sold or bought. Now, in Aleppo, we said before that the community guarded the Codex zealously for 600 years. It was kept together with 3 other biblical manuscripts in a special cupboard. I think it was actually an iron safe, to be precise. That's what is reported over here inside this article. It was in an iron safe in a basement chapel of the central synagogue of Aleppo. This, we've spoken about before, supposed to have been the cave of Elijah. It was regarded as the community's most sacred possession. Those in trouble would pray before it, and oaths were taken by it. The community received queries from Jewish people worldwide who asked that various textual details be checked, preserved in the responsive literature. It allowed for the reconstruction of information in the missing parts today. Most importantly, I think in the 1850s, someone named Shalom Shane Yelin sent his son-in-law, Moshe Joshua Kimchi, to Aleppo to copy information about the Codex. Now, about Moshe Kimchi, I think we mentioned him before inside this series already in the past, I believe. We mentioned him. Obviously, he took a very integral role at that stage in time if he was doing this. But if anyone knows more information about him, please, I would really, really appreciate it. It could be that he was a Hebrew poet, a philosopher, a grammarian, or that was maybe someone else on the same name, so I'm not 100% sure on that. So, okay, so his son-in-law was Moshe Joshua Kimchi. He went to Aleppo to copy the information about the Codex. Kimchi sat for weeks and copied thousands of details about the Codex into the margins of a small handwritten Bible. Now, the existence of this Bible was known to 20th century scholars from the book, the Amudei Shesh, I think by Shlomo Boyarsky. I believe he happened to be himself a Lithuanian rabbinical scholar and a scribe who lived in Jerusalem, part of the old Yoshiv, respectively. He was the author of the book, the Amudei Shesh, a great rabbinical work. And the actual Bible itself was discovered by someone named Yosef Ofer in 1989. I'm not sure much information about him. However, the community limited outsiders' direct observation of the manuscript, especially by scholars in modern times. There's a man named Paul E. Heil, was a German Orientalist and a scholar. He was revising the text of the Bible Hebraika in the 1920s. He tried and, failed to obtain photographic copy. And this forced him to use the Leningrad's Codex instead for the 3rd edition. which appeared, I think, in 1937. Now, this Orientalist, I think he passed away in the year 19... Sorry, just a connection went over there. So we're talking about the Orientalist that, let's just say, this in of its own right. I think he passed away in the year 1964, he did. And obviously he was a famous man connected to researching about this specific topic. Okay, so what's interesting is, I think the only modern scholar allowed to compare it with standard printed Hebrew Torah, Bible, and take notes on differences was someone named Rabbi Umberto Casuta. Now, we've spoken about him before. He examined this in the year 1943. Now, just to talk about Rabbi Umberto Casuta, he passed away in 1951. He was an Italian historian. He was a rabbi, a scholar of Hebrew Bible and Ugaritic literature. I think he was part of the University of Florence. We've spoken about him on various occasions before. He would actually reside in Israel towards the end of his life. He was actually buried in Sanhedria. We spoke about him. He takes a crucial role with regards to Jewish history, especially at the time of the formation of the state. He would also be a professor of Hebrew literature at University of Florence. Rabbi Casuta was a chief rabbi of Florence between 1922 to 1925, and I think he was close to the principal Samuel Hirsch Margulis, had an influence on him, and he would, I believe he'd also fill the chair of biblical studies at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in mandatory Palestine in 1939, and he would teach it until 1951. So much, we've actually spoken about him on various occasions before. He wrote various different books, also in English and in Italian. So I recommend everyone to look within regard to him. He was definitely a famous rabbi of his time in Italy. So just going back within regards to Rabbi Umberto Casuto, the secrecy made it impossible to confirm the authenticity of the codex, and indeed Rabbi Casuto doubted that it was Maimonides' codex, though he agreed that it was 10th century. It was. Okay, so if anyone knows more information, please let me know. During the 1947 anti-Jewish riots in Aleppo, the community's ancient synagogue was burned. Later, while the codex was in Israel, it was found that no more than 295 of the original 487 pages survived. The missing, let's say, pages, leaves, are subject of fierce controversy. Initially, it was thought they were destroyed by the fire, but scholarly analysis has shown no evidence of fire having reached the codex itself. Some scholars instead accuse Jewish community members of having torn off the missing leaves and kept them privately hidden. The two missing portions reported over of the manuscript, let's say a single complete leaf from the Book of Chronicles, Debrei Yamim, and a fragment of the page of the Book of Exodus, Shemot, were turned up from such sources in 1980s, leaving open the possibility that even more may have survived the riots of 1947. I think the Aleppo Codex books by Matthew Friedman calls attention to the fact that eyewitnesses in Aleppo who saw the codex shortly after the fire consistently reported that it was complete or nearly complete, and then there is no account of it for more than a decade after that. I think there's someone, a great-grandson of a filmmaker called Avi Dabach. He's a great-grandson of Rabbi Ezra Dabach, who was one of the, let's say, last caretakers of the Codex when it was still in Syria, announced, I think, in December 2015, an upcoming film tracing the history of the Codex and possibly determining the fate of the missing pages. The film title, I believe, The Lost Crown, and was released in 2018. In Israel, the Aleppo Codex was smuggled out of Syria in January 1958, and was to be placed in the care of the chief rabbi of the Aleppo Jews. It was given first to someone named Shlomo Zalman Shragai. He was, I think, an Israeli politician in West Jerusalem. He was the first elected mayor over there, and I don't think we mentioned him before in this series. He was actually a Polish Jew. I think he served as honorary world president, for example, of Hapoel Hamizrahi group. So much more can be said within regards to him also. So he would, he was of the Jewish Agency, and later he would, I think, testify that the Codex was complete, or nearly so at the time. Later that year, it was given to the Ben Tzvi Institute. Now, this is obviously a research institute and a publishing house named for Israeli President Yitzhak Ben Tzvi in Jerusalem. So during 1958, the Jewish community of Aleppo would reported over sued the Ben Tzvi Institute for the return of the Codex. The court ruled against them and suppressed the publication. Museum. And I think the work of Moshe Goshen Gottstein who was a German-born professor of Semitic languages and biblical philology at the Hebrew University. On the few surviving pages of the Torah seems to have confirmed these claims beyond reasonable doubt, which I have to point out. During the Gulf War and again during the Gaza War, the scrolls were placed in secure storage as part of the Israel Museum's emergency protocol. Now, reconstruction attempts. Later, after, let's just say, the university denied access to the Codex, Mordechai Brewer. Mordechai, he happened to be a German-born Israel Orthodox rabbi. He's one of the world's leading experts on Tanakh, especially of the text of the Aleppo Codex, began his reconstruction of the Masoretic text based on other well-known ancient manuscripts. His results matched the Aleppo Codex almost precisely. Rabbi Brewer's version is used authoritatively to reconstruct the missing portions of the Aleppo Codex. Now, the Jerusalem Crown, printed in Jerusalem in 2000, is a modern version of the Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, based on the Aleppo Codex and the work of Rabbi Brewer. It uses newly designed typeface based on the calligraphy of the Codex and is based on its layout, let's just say, in of itself. Now, the authoritative text about it, let's speak a bit within regards to that. There's a lot of information actually to cover over here. Just using, at the moment, the Wikipedia article within regards to this. So I think the consonants in the Codex were copied by the scribe Shlomo ben Buya in Palestine circa 920. The text was then verified with Masoretic notes by Aaron ben Moses ben Asher, Rabbi, the last prominent member of the Ben Asher dynasty. Let's just say he lived in Tiberias himself. And the tradition of Ben Asher has become the one accepted for the Hebrew Bible. It's reported over. Now, the community of Damascus, I think, possessed a counterpart of the Aleppo Codex known as the Damascus Pentateuch, in academic circles as the Damascus Keter, or Crown of Damascus. And I think it was also written in the 10th century, respectively. Okay. Yeah, so more can be said about that. The physical description, the Codex at itself, now in the Israel Museum, where it's kept in a vault, consists of 294 pages, delivered by the Ben Tzvi Institute, plus one full page and a section of second one recovered subsequently. The pages are preserved unbound and written on both sides. Each page is parchment, 33 centimeters high, 26.5 centimeter width. In particular, only the last few pages of the Torah are extant. The ink was made of three types of gal, ground and mixed with black soot, and iron sulfate. The manuscript has been restored by specialists of the Israel Museum. Its director declared that, given the Codex's history, it is in remarkably excellent condition. The purple markings on the edges of the pages were to be found to be mold rather than the fire damage. Now, the contents, the Aleppo Codex was completed, I think, until 1947. It followed the Tiberian textual tradition in the order of the book, similar to the Leningrad Codex, and which also matches the later tradition of Sephardi biblical manuscripts. The Torah and Nevi'im appear in the same order found in most printed Hebrew Bibles, but the order for the books of Ketuvim differs, let's say, markedly. In Aleppo itself, there's, and just to go on over here, so in the Aleppo Codex, the order of the Ketuvim is Book of Chronicles, Psalms, Book of Job, Book of Proverbs, Book of Ruth, Song of Songs, that's Shir Hashim, Ecclesiastes also, and Book of Lamentations, that's Acre, also popular as, Book of Esther, Megillat Esther, Book of Daniel, the Book of Ezra, and the Book of Nehemiah, and so on and so forth. Okay, modern editions, several, let's just say, I think various different modern editions were put. I think complete Tanakh. There are complete editions of Tanakh, usually in one volume, but sometimes also sold in 3 volumes. Apart from the last, they do not include Masoretic notes of the Aleppo Codex. For example, Mossad Harav Kook, a place we visited before, I think it's based near Tachamak, as it. The edition, I think, of Rabbi Mordechai Brewer, I think the Torah was in 1977, Nevi'im 1979, the Ketuvim in 1982, respectively. It was the Horeb publications between 1996 and 1998, once again connected, I think, to Rabbi Mordechai Brewer again. And there was a Jerusalem crown. I think that was 2000, it was printed, the Bible of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Jerusalem Simanim. There was also the Jerusalem Simanim Institute, that Feldon Publishers will print in 2004. Mikraot Gedolot Keter Bar Ilan University from 1992, respectively. I think there's even an online Tanakh at present, a Machon Memre Mamre actually provides that. Now, there's an excellent article over here, I think from Rabbi Mordechai Becher on this topic. It talks about, we'll do a read of this, maybe we will be repeating a few things that we've said already, but let's go for it. So how the oldest, most complete and most accurate text of the Hebrew Bible found its way back to Jerusalem. Okay, I'm not sure what the Socrates would have made of the internet and social media. In one of the dialogues recorded by Plato, Socrates criticizes the art of writing as something that would destroy, let's say, memory. This invention of yours will create forgetfulness in the learner's souls because they will not use their memories. They will trust to the external written characters and not remember by themselves. It introduces this excellent, let's say, phrase of its own right, this article does. To some extent, Rabbi Mordechai says, Jewish tradition agrees, and this is one reason that for over 1,500 years, most of Judaism was transmitted in an oral format known as oral Torah. Eventually, it became clear that due to circumstances of exile, unless this information was committed to writing it, would be lost completely. In about 170 Common Era, Rabbi Judah the Prince, a rabbi and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, you could say, in Hebrew. He was a rabbi and leader of the Jewish people. He decided to write down the oral information in the form of a 6-volume work known as a Mishnah, respectively. There is, however, one text that the Jewish people have preserved, copied and transmitted for over 3,300 years, a format unchanged since antiquity. The Torah scroll written on parchment in an ancient script, does not contain vowel sounds or punctuation, has variations in the spelling of words as either plain or defective, and as words are pronounced differently than they are written. All this information is part of the Little Torah. As the Talmud puts it, Rabbi Yitzchak said, the vocalization of the scribes and the ornamentation of the scribes and the verses with words that are read but not written, and those that are written but not read, are all laws transmitted to Moses from Sinai, Mount Sinai. Now, concerned that this information would be lost, a group of scholars known as Masoretes decided to write down everything in the oral law regarding the text of the Torah scroll. They vowelized the text, Nikudot, as we say in Hebrew, recorded cancellation notes, which provide punctuation, Tameh Mikra or Trop, listed every possible textual variation, and indicated every form of spelling and pronunciation of the sacred text. Now, because of our veneration for the Torah scroll, none of this information may be recorded in the scroll itself. The scroll is pure, unadulterated, pristine ancient Torah, nothing else. Now, the Masoretes, primarily the Ben Asher family, who we spoke about before in the earlier parts of this feature, in the 10th century of Tiberias on the shores of the Sea of the Galilee. At that time, Tiberias was let's say, the scholarly, political, economic, and cultural capital of Israel, and Muslim conquest have brought it, let's say, with the import of paper-making technology from China. Now, the Masoretes were at the right time and place and engaged in the monumental task of preserving the text of the Bible and its oral traditions. They paid attention to every single letter, to spaces between paragraphs and chapters, to text layouts, differences between the written and spoken text, and counted the occurrence of words throughout the entire Bible over there. That's what's stated over. Now, after years of work, they produced a codex, a book that contained all the above information, both within the text and as marginal notes known as a Masorah. Eventually, the codex, called the Crown or Keter, was moved to Jerusalem sometime in the 11th century, but was apparently stolen by the Crusaders at some point, which we said about before. History gets a little, let's say, murky here, the author says, but it seems that the codex was ransomed from the Crusaders at the great cost of the Jewish community. In 12th century, the codex turned up in Fostat, which was mentioned about before, that was eventually became Cairo, where there was a large, well-established Jewish community. The most famous sage of the Fostat was, obviously, Rabbi Moses Maimonides, who saw the codex and wrote. The codex on which I relied on for these matters was Codex Renowned in Egypt, which included all 24 books of the Bible. It was kept in Jerusalem for many years so that scrolls could be checked from it. Everyone relies upon it because it was corrected by Ben Asher, who spent many years writing it precisely and checked it many times over. Now, I think, obviously, like we said before, in 1375, Maimonides' great-great-grandson, David, moved to Aleppo in Syria, and it's believed that he brought the treasure with him. The Codex became known as a crown of Aleppo, obviously Kete Aram Sova, and it's kept by the Syrian Jews in the great synagogue of Aleppo. Now, if you watch our channel, this under intense security, brought out only for the occasion consultation or pursual of scholars. Now, in the Adda synagogue in Nachlaot, I think they've got a model, a showcase of the Aleppo Codex, also which we actually visited on this channel. The crown remained in the synagogue until November 1947. There was a rise of Arab nationalism and the pro-Nazi sympathies of the Syrian regime. Many believed that the crown was in danger. As we mentioned before, Yitzhak Ben Tzvi, who was a historian and Zionist leader, became the second president of the State of Israel, made attempts to bring the Codex to Israel, but was unsuccessful. Now, in November 1947, the Syrian government instigated riots against the Jewish population, and the great synagogue of Aleppo was burned down. Rumors flew regarding the fate of the Codex. Some say it was destroyed, some said it was saved. Some claimed it was saved by one person, others claim a different savior. Two eminent scholars of the Codex, Rabbi, I think Chaim Tawil, I'm not sure if it was Rabbi or not, and Bernard Schneider, list no less than 7 different accounts of the fate of the crown. Now, I think this actually sourced, this is the Crown of Aleppo. I think maybe there was a book called The Crown of Aleppo, but that I'll have to double check. And after, as we said before, after the State of Israel was established and the border with Syria was closed, efforts to recover the crown became much more difficult. Yitzhak Ben Tzvi enlisted the aid of the Israel security services and involved diplomats, spies, and rabbis in returning the crown to Israel. Until 504, a top-secret section of the Israeli military intelligence specializing in infiltration of agents into Arab countries was also involved. And the author's doesn't know enough to confirm this. This was a unit that took part in obtaining the Dead Sea Scrolls later, it's reported over. Here again, there are many different versions of what happened, but eventually the crown, albeit with missing sections and damaged by fire and fungus, came back to the birthplace, Israel. Now the focus turned to preserving the crown and researching, let's just say, the surviving parts. A manuscript written in Tiberias, Israel, in 10th century, traveled to Jerusalem, was kidnapped and ransomed, taken to Egypt, like we mentioned before, from there to Aleppo, and then to Syria, and from there back to Jerusalem instead. The crown of Aleppo is a symbol of Jewish continuity, of Jewish devotion to the Torah, and of the return of the Jewish people to its ancient homeland. So much is chronicled over within regards to this. Excellent article over here, just using the aish.com website. I think adapting an article just in the latter part of this video from Rabbi Mordechai Becher. So very interesting. Now, friends, we're a community here. On this channel, we do explore the history within regards to the famous Oriental rabbis of yesteryear, Ottoman empires, North African rabbis, one of the few places that does this in English. Today was a special edition. We want to speak about the Aleppo Codex. We're trying also to go through the various different countries and look at different synagogues there was, different yeshivot at the moment, what was going on in these famous places where maybe we don't really speak about it so much, or you can't find so much information also in various different books and various different places. But I think this will be a nice special edition here to speak about the Kete Aram Tsova. Friends, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to the channel. We are nearing a staggering 7,000 subscribers, which is absolutely phenomenal. So please subscribe to the channel. If you feel anyone is interested in watching any of these videos here, please share these videos also to other people and join the community over here now. So thanks very much, everyone, for watching. Have a great day and subscribe and take care. Thank you.